There's a moment in every life when you catch your reflection and realize the person looking back isn't quite who you imagined you'd be. Not failure, something subtler. A sense that something essential has slipped out of place. A gap between who you are and who you could become. That uneasy awareness is where transformation begins. Before anything shifts on the outside, a quiet psychological revolution starts within. We like to picture change as an event, a decision, a breakthrough, a turning point. But real transformation is a process, dismantling and rebuilding the way the mind perceives, feels, and chooses. It isn't just doing different things. It's seeing through a different lens. Deep internal change doesn't arrive overnight. It unfolds quietly, often through struggle, self-doubt, and long looks inward. The very moments we tend to avoid. Psychologists have studied this for decades. Carl Jung called it individuation, integrating the fragmented parts of the self into a more coherent whole. Abraham Maslow described a path towards self-actualization. Potential unfolding as our basic needs stabilize. Strip away the theories, and the truth is simple. Transformation starts when the pain of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of change. Most of us don't cross that threshold consciously. We repeat patterns, emotional programs learned in childhood, guided by invisible scripts shaped by family, culture, and early experiences. I'm not good enough. People like me don't succeed. It's too late. They sound harmless, but they become the hidden architecture of a life. Change begins the moment we question those walls. Not by smashing them, by seeing them. Awareness, simple as it sounds, is the first act of rebellion against a conditioned mind. When you notice the pattern, it loses its grip. Research on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, shows something remarkable. Every time you consciously challenge an old belief or behavior, your brain begins to change. New connections form. Old pathways weaken. The brain isn't a fixed map. It's a living landscape that adapts to experience. In that sense, transformation is neurobiological construction. You're reshaping your mind when you choose, think, and act differently. Here's the paradox. Most people want transformation without discomfort. They want the reward without the friction that makes it possible. But discomfort isn't failure. It's a sign the brain is being nudged out of its predictable roots. The ego resists because its job is stability. That's why growth feels chaotic. Your inner system clings to the familiar, even when it's suffocating you. If you've tried to wake earlier, eat better, or think more generously, you've felt that friction. It isn't laziness. It's psychological homeostasis, the mind's pull to keep your self-image consistent. Act outside your identity, and the mind tries to restore the old balance. Which is why real transformation doesn't start with new habits. It starts with a new self-concept. Identity must shift before behavior can sustain itself. See yourself as always disorganized, and you'll tidy once or twice, then drift back to chaos. Believe you're bad with money, and you'll save for a week, then sabotage it. But when you say, I'm a person who takes care of my space, or I'm learning to manage money well, your mind has a new image to align with. Once identity shifts, behavior feels natural rather than forced. Transformation is an identity project disguised as self-improvement. From breaking addictions to healing relationships, meaningful change begins with redefining who you believe you are. That is why therapy, journaling, and honest reflection work. They make the unconscious visible. Hidden beliefs lose power when seen. The process isn't linear. Most people describe it as a cycle: progress, doubt, regression, clarity, renewal. It echoes Joseph Campbell's hero's journey: leaving the familiar, facing trials, returning changed. Psychology has a name for the in-between, the liminal phase, the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's uncertain, uncomfortable, and necessary. Without it, there's no room
The
for
brain
rebirth.
mirrors this cycle. In liminal times, quitting a job, ending a relationship, facing old wounds, the default mode network often becomes more active, supporting self-reflection and narrative identity. Your brain is literally rewriting your story. Repeated with emotion, that new story embeds neurologically. You become what you believe isn't just poetry. It describes a measurable learning process. Reinforce a pattern often enough, and the brain treats it as truth. Here's where many journeys stall. People force new behaviors while clutching old identities. I want to be confident, they say, while secretly believing they're inadequate. The subconscious rejects the performance. It trusts the older script. So transformation demands truth before effort. You can't become someone new while lying to yourself about who you are. Radical honesty is the foundation. Not the kind that shames, the kind that gently reveals. Here's what I feel. Here's what I've avoided. Here's what still hurts. That honesty dissolves the defenses that keep old patterns in place, like cleaning a wound, painful but necessary. Something shifts there. You stop trying to change from self-rejection and start evolving from self-understanding. Most self-help fails because it assumes you're broken. Psychological transformation isn't about fixing. It's about integration, acknowledging the parts you disowned and learning to work with them instead of against them. Take procrastination. On the surface, I need more discipline. Underneath, fear of failure, success, judgment. When that fear is met with curiosity instead of shame, avoidance loses its job. Transformation is not self-attack. It's self-reconciliation. Emotional awareness is non-negotiable. You can't transform what you refuse to feel. Emotions are signals, data from the subconscious. Anger can point to violated boundaries, sadness to loss, anxiety to the gap between an old self and an emerging one. When you learn to interpret rather than suppress, you move through emotions instead of being trapped by them. Mindfulness and self-compassion help by softening the brain's threat response. Approach your discomfort with curiosity, and the amygdala quiets. Access to the prefrontal cortex, reasoning, planning, opens. Put simply, kindness expands your capacity to change. The most profound shifts happen quietly, noting in grand declarations but in small choices. You pause before reacting. Breathe before speaking. Say no where you once said yes out of fear. Each is a micro-revolution that rewires the self. Accumulate enough, and the old identity fades, replaced by something truer and freer. We rarely notice transformation in real time. You recognize it looking back. Conversations you no longer tolerate. Thoughts that no longer dominate. Pain that no longer defines. The current you might be unrecognizable to your past self. That's the quiet miracle. It isn't a single awakening, but the gradual realization that you've outgrown an old version without waging war on it. And it keeps going. Transformation doesn't end, it evolves. Each new identity reveals another threshold, another layer to integrate. Growth doesn't require perfection, only participation. The mind resists, the heart wavers, and yet something in you keeps moving forward, tugged by the pull of becoming. What most people misunderstand, transformation is less about motivation than it is about awareness. So honest it dissolves illusion. See the mechanics, your fears, narratives, defenses, and you gain freedom. Not the freedom that makes life easy, but the freedom to choose differently even when it isn't. Consider cognitive dissonance, the discomfort when actions and beliefs misalign. Most people ease the tension by slipping back into old actions. Those who transform do the opposite. They let the discomfort persist long enough for their beliefs to evolve. They endure the in-between, too aware to go back, not yet certain enough to surge ahead. That's where identity hardens into reality. Environment matters more than we admit. Willpower alone rarely overrides surroundings. The people you talk to, the content you consume, the spaces you inhabit, these all reinforce identity. If you're cultivating creativity but marinate in cynicism, you send the brain conflicting signals. That's why environmental design matters. Remove triggers of the old self. Add cues that support the new one. Choose relationships that reflect your potential, not just your history. You can't plant new seeds in toxic soil.
Beneath all of this is belief. Beliefs aren't just thoughts. They're instructions the brain gives the body. Believe you can't change, and your nervous system prepares for failure. Believe you can, and physiology shifts. Posture, focus, readiness. This isn't magic. It's expectation shaping attention and action. Visualization and affirmations, when emotionally grounded, recruit overlapping neural networks used in real performance. Rehearse a new identity vividly, and the brain treats it as more familiar. Resistance lessens when you enact it. But transformation isn't pretending. Pretending says, I am what I'm not. Embodying says, I'm learning to live what I already am beneath the noise. The psyche doesn't crave to become someone else so much as to return to wholeness, when fear and conditioning no longer call the shots. As children, we built a persona to survive. What earns love? What avoids rejection? Useful then, constricting now. The journey begins when you stop identifying with the mask and ask, who am I beneath what I was taught to be? In therapy, this is sometimes called ego softening. Not a dramatic death, but loosening the grip of the constructed self. You defend less, prove less, observe more. Transformation feels less like effort and more like unfolding. Authenticity isn't a fixed state. It's adaptive. Who you are today isn't who you were 5 years ago. That's not contradiction, it's evolution. Identity is dynamic. Each experience rewrites a line of your inner story. So don't chase a final version. Live aligned with your current truth, knowing it will keep changing as you do. Transformation demands courage, the quiet kind that shows up when no one's watching. Changing yourself means disappointing old versions of you, and sometimes people who still need you to be who you were. You'll face misunderstanding and loss before you feel liberation. But what you lose in comfort, you gain in clarity. There's a useful principle. Suppressed emotion doesn't vanish. It reappears as patterns, projections, even tension in the body. When you commit to change, that backlog surfaces. It feels turbulent, not because you're breaking, but because you're releasing. Tears, confusion, fatigue, these are signs of processing, not weakness. Every release makes room for renewal. Your relationship with time shifts. The future stops feeling distant. It begins to unfold from what you choose now. You act from alignment rather than